The Navajo tribe is the largest native group of the United States. It is 27,000 square miles located in the Four Corner region within the states of Utah, Arizona, and New Mexico. The Navajo tribe traditionally lived together in small groups, often near a source of water due to the fact that it hardly rained in the reservation. The Navajos' dwellings were a conical or circular structure made of logs or stone. It also had a smoke hole in the center, made of wood or cement, with the door facing toward the east so the sun would shine in every morning. The Navajo were also a matriarchy where the women would own the majority of the resources and property, such as the livestock. They also had a strong sense of family allegiance. The Sioux Tribe Reservation encompasses 25 million acres and is located in all of South Dakota west of the Missouri River. The Sioux also had permission to hunt in areas of Nebraska, Montana, Wyoming, and North Dakota until the buffalo were gone. The Sioux tribe relied heavily on the buffalo as their main source of food, clothing, tools, and used their hides to cover their teepees. The Sioux were a nomadic culture, meaning wherever the buffalo went, they had to follow. Warfare was a big part of their culture as well, which led to intertribal conflicts and violent confrontations with white settlers and the U.S. Army.
So I will first be talking about the Navajos and what happened to them on the reservations. They were first moved to Bosque Redondo. They had to walk to Bosque Redondo by foot. The Navajos had remembered this march as a long walk. When they were at Bosque Redondo, some Navajos saw Bosque Redondo more as a prison camp than a reservation. After being at Bosque Redondo for 5 years, they moved again to the Navajo Indian Reservation, which was in their homeland, and they ended up staying there. The Navajos have always been herders, but when they were moved to Bosque Redondo, they were being forced to switch to farming. The government always would tell them what to do, and they never agreed with the government. However, they were always scared that they would get their sheep taken away, because to the Navajos, they depended on sheep a lot. Sheep and survival were the same for the Navajos. This first picture is of some Navajos at the Navajo Indian Reservation. The next picture is some other Navajos at the Bosque Redondo Reservation. So now I will be talking about the Sioux and what happened to them on the reservations. On the Sioux reservations, ghost dancing became the rage. Indians everywhere danced the ghost dance, for Christ had returned to earth as an Indian. In the winter, an agent at Pine Ridge Reservation in South Dakota sent a warning to Washington, saying, quote, "Indians are dancing in the snow and are wild and crazy. We need protection and we need it now. The leaders should be arrested and confined at some military post until the matter is quieted, and this should be done at once." End quote. Indian Bureau in Washington quickly received the warning and identified the ghost dance and ordered the army to arrest them, including Chiefs Sitting Bull and Bigfoot. Indian policemen were sent to Sitting Bull's cabin. After arresting him, the rest of the Sioux became angry and attacked back. The police shot and killed the chief. The news of Sitting Bull's murder alarmed Bigfoot, chief of another group of Sioux. While trying to escape, Bigfoot and his people, mostly women and children, were intercepted by the cavalry. Bigfoot and his people were then surrendered and were escorted to a camp near a frozen creek called Wounded Knees. This first picture is about a newspaper article from the Detroit Free Press talking about the chief, the Sitting Bull, getting killed. This next picture is a picture of the chief, the Sitting Bull. The last picture is another picture of another chief, which is Bigfoot.
Tribal governments are the oldest in existence in the West. Despite common misperceptions in the United States, it was not the first to institute the democratic rule. From the beginning, the Founding Fathers admired the tribal government. When the colonists first arrived to America, the way Parliament ran things was they shouted at each other until one backed down. The Europeans realized that was not going to work, and newcomers had to sit with the tribes and learn the way they ran their meetings. sitting in a group and letting everybody talk. No interrupting. Nothing. The U.S. Constitution recognized tribal government, and starting with America's founding fathers pledged their sovereignty was to be protected. Federal policy toward Indians and tribal governments were inconsistent throughout much of the 19th century. As the 1900s approached, federal officials adopted a goal of assimilation and initiated efforts to end the reservation and tribal government system, something called the Native American Tribe Policy. This policy was formed so Americans could take over their land. The laws and operations were developed and adapted in the U.S. to outline the relationship between the Native tribes and the federal government. The reservations were devised to encourage Native Americans to live in a conformed zone, and the U.S. promised to provide food, goods, and money, and to protect from attacks by other tribes and European settlers.
Did the Native Americans resist the reservation system? In the first slide, we see two images. The left image is of the Northern Cheyenne Indian Reservation. The people in the image are performing the grub dance, which marked ration days. On the right, we see an image of the ghost dance being performed by Lakota Indians in the late 1800s. Native American resistance to reservations came in many different forms. In the 1860s, the Sioux tribe got the United States to sign a treaty allowing them to keep a portion of their land, otherwise known as a reservation. A gold rush eventually brought white settlers back onto the Sioux territory, which upset the Sioux people. They eventually teamed up with the Cheyenne tribe, and led by Chief Sitting Bull, the Sioux and Cheyenne won the Battle of Custer's Last Stand. This battle was also known as the Battle of Little Bighorn. At this battle, the Sioux and Cheyenne killed nearly all the soldiers that attacked them. Over the next couple decades, the Sioux traveled to the Dakotas. The Sioux were ultimately defeated in the Battle of Wounded Knee, fought on the Pine Ridge Reservation in the southwestern South Dakota in 1891. Today, approximately 30,000 Sioux people are living in South Dakota, with more in Nebraska, Montana, and Canada. While the Navajo people also resisted the reservation system, they initially had peaceful interactions with settlers. Tensions grew due to the Navajos frequently raiding Mexican and Spanish settlements. From the early 1800s to 1865, a period of raids and counter-raids called the Navajo Wars ensued. In 1863, the American government attempted a removal effort known as the Long Walk to Bosque Redondo. The walk was brutal, with some 8,000 men, women, and children of the Navajo tribe being forced to march nearly 300 miles from northeastern Arizona to Bosque Redondo in eastern New Mexico. They traveled in harsh winter conditions, with approximately 200 Navajo people dying on the way from the cold and starvation, and more people dying upon arrival to the barren reservation. The Navajo were one of the few tribes that were eventually allowed to return to their own land. They were given rations and sheep by the United States government, and within a few years, the Navajo had multiplied their sheep population, and they began to thrive again. Another form of Native American resistance to the reservation system was the ghost dance. The ghost dance was a religious movement that occurred in 1889. The dance itself originated among the Paiute Indians in 1870. The dance was born in a vision had by a Paiute prophet named Wovaka. He predicted the dance would bring peace and happiness to the Indian population, and it served as a unifier for Native people from all tribes. The people who performed the dance believed it would make them impervious to the bullets of the white settlers, and the United States feared the movement for the strength it gave the Indian population. They made multiple attempts to eradicate the movement, despite the fact that it was a peaceful form of resistance and originated as a movement called Fight No One, Hate No One. In the last slide, we see two depictions of people performing the ghost dance. On the left is a painting, on the right is a photograph.